Welcome to our guide on mastering output customization in EViews. This presentation is designed for university students and researchers looking to elevate their econometric analysis from raw data to professional, insightful reports. We will cover the entire workflow, from understanding the nature of EViews' dynamic views to creating polished, permanent objects ready for publication or presentation. Imagine you've just run a complex VEC model. Instead of just copying a basic table, you'll learn how to format it with custom headers, highlight significant results, and package it with relevant graphs into a single, organized report. First, let's address a fundamental challenge that every EViews user encounters: the temporary nature of its output windows. The core concept to grasp is that an EViews view is not a static file. It's a live window looking at your current dataset and sample. This makes it highly dynamic and responsive. This dynamism, while useful in some ways, becomes a significant problem. If you change the sample size or update the underlying data, any custom formatting you've painstakingly applied to a view is instantly lost. The graph might distort or disappear entirely, undoing all your work. Therefore, our primary goal, and the solution to this challenge, is to convert these volatile views into permanent, independent objects. These objects are stable snapshots that preserve our analyses and customizations, creating a reliable record of our work that survives data changes. Imagine you spend 20 minutes perfecting a line graph showing GDP growth for the 2000-2010 period. Then you change the workfile sample to 2011-2020 for another task. When you go back, your perfect graph is gone, replaced by a view of the new sample. We need to prevent this. So how do we systematically convert these temporary views into permanent objects? This is achieved through a clear, step-by-step process, which we'll call the object lifecycle. This flowchart illustrates the essential workflow. You start with your data, such as a series or a group of series. From this input, you generate a dynamic view, like a graph or a table. This is the temporary stage. The most crucial step is to freeze this view. This action creates a new, independent object, a static snapshot of the view. Once you have an object, you can safely customize it using various editing tools and templates. Finally, you can collect these customized objects into a spool for organization or export them for your final report. This flowchart can be summarized as analyze, freeze, polish, present. The crucial rule to remember is that you cannot permanently customize a view. You must freeze it first to create an independent object. If your goal is to show visual trends, the graph object is your best choice. It's perfect for time series plots, impulse response functions, or scatter diagrams where the visual impact is key. When numerical precision is paramount, use a table object. This is ideal for presenting regression outputs, descriptive statistics, or unit root test results, where the exact numbers matter. For managing a large volume of outputs, the spool object is indispensable. It acts as a container, allowing you to group dozens of graphs and tables into a single file, which is perfect for creating project logs or report appendices. For a term paper on the determinants of wage, you would use a table object for your main regression results, graph objects to show the distribution of residuals, and a spool object to collect all robustness checks in an appendix. We've mentioned the freeze command several times as the key step. Now, let's delve deeper into what freezing actually does and the options it provides. When you freeze a view, EViews presents you with update options. The default mode is off, which creates a purely static snapshot. This object is completely disconnected from the source data and will never change. Alternatively, you can choose manual or automatic mode. This creates what can be called a chilled graph. It retains all your custom formatting, but remains linked to the data. If the underlying data changes, the graph will update its values while keeping your titles, colors, and annotations. A crucial pro tip: as soon as you freeze an object, it exists as an unnamed window. If you close it without saving, it's gone forever. Always give it a name immediately to save it within your work file. This slide breaks down the key architectural elements of both graph and table objects within EViews, highlighting their extensive customization capabilities. For graph objects, you can see how flexible they are. The legend can be moved. You can add specific text annotations to highlight important data points or events. And there are features like templates, shading, and various line styles to control their appearance. On the right, we examine table objects. These are also highly flexible, allowing for editable cells, the use of headers, and the addition of comments, indicated by a small red triangle, to provide context for specific data points. The features listed for tables include bolding, italics, merging cells for better organization, and even using formulas for dynamic content. The customization power section on the right summarizes the core strength. For graphs, you can apply templates to instantly format multiple graphs with a consistent look. For tables, you use the Edit plus minus mode to manually modify values or headers, giving you complete control over the presentation of your numerical results. Think of a spool as a folder or a binder within your EViews work file. Its purpose is to hold multiple objects, graphs, tables, and even text in one organized place. This is incredibly efficient. Instead of exporting 10 different graphs and tables as 10 separate files, you can add them all to a single spool and then print or export the spool as one document. The spool's navigation tree on the left allows for easy management. You can reorder objects by dragging and dropping, add new ones, delete old ones, or extract a specific object to work on it separately. When conducting a time series analysis, you might create a spool called forecast. You would add the time series plot, the ACF-PACF correlograms, the ARMA estimation table, and the final forecast graph all into this one spool for a complete, self-contained record. Now that we understand the what and why, let's quickly go over the how by navigating the EViews interface to perform these actions. This slide provides a quick guide to navigating the EViews interface for common tasks related to output customization. To freeze a view, simply go to the Objects window and click the Freeze button on the toolbar, typically represented by a camera icon with a snowflake. For customizing graphs, the fastest way to access the main options dialog is to double-click on the graph's background. A helpful navigation tip: double-clicking specific elements, like an axis or a legend, is the quickest way to open their respective customization menus. To format a table, right-click on a cell to access properties, or toggle the Edit plus minus mode from the toolbar to start making manual changes. And to create a new spool, go to the main work file menu and select Object, New Object, Spool. Additionally, always remember the power of context menus. Right-clicking anywhere in EViews reveals options not always visible in the main toolbar, offering quick access to relevant functions. Our case study begins by generating a standard view. We open a group object containing our series of interest, and then select View, Graph, Line Graph. The result is a functional but very basic line chart. It lacks a descriptive title, custom colors, or any annotations that would help tell a story. The critical warning here is to resist the urge to start formatting at this stage. Remember, this is a temporary view. Any edits made now will be lost if the sample changes. The first and only action should be to freeze it. The first action is to click the Freeze button. This creates a new graph object. Immediately, we name it something descriptive, like Graph GDP, to save it in our work file. To quickly achieve a professional look, we can apply a predefined template. In the graph options, under Templates and Objects, we can select Apply Template and choose a style like Midnight or Monochrome. This standardizes the look across all graphs in a project. For further refinement, we can add specific elements. For instance, we can insert a text box to label a structural break, or use the shading tool to highlight a period of recession, adding valuable context to the data. For our regression output table, we first freeze it, and then click the Edit plus minus button to enable manual editing. A common refinement is to highlight statistically significant results. We can select the coefficients with a p-value less than 0.05, for example, and make them bold to draw the reader's eye. We can also annotate the table. By right-clicking a cell, we can insert a comment to explain a specific variable or clarify the model specification, as seen with X is certainly an exciting variable. This adds a layer of information without cluttering the main table. Finally, for readability, we can use the cell format option to set a consistent number of decimal places for all coefficients and standard errors, for example, to 2 digits. We can also merge cells to create cleaner and more descriptive headers. In our output table, the coefficient for the education variable is 0.58734 with a p-value of 0.01. We would bold the 0.58734 and then add a comment to the variable name education that says measured in years of schooling. Now that we have a polished graph and a refined table, the final step is to organize and export them for our report. First, we consolidate our work. We create a new spool object and append our final objects, graph GDP and table results, to it. This keeps all related outputs for this part of the analysis together. Next, we export to a program like Microsoft Word using OLE, Object Linking and Embedding. We have two main choices. Paste link creates a dynamic connection. If we later update the graph in EViews, the change will automatically be reflected in the Word document. This is great for ongoing research. Paste object simply embeds a static image of the graph. This is safer for final submissions, as it ensures the document will not change unexpectedly. Let's recap the most important takeaways. First, always remember the fundamental difference. Views are temporary, objects are permanent. The freeze command is the essential action that allows you to create a permanent snapshot that you can then safely customize. For efficiency and consistency, make liberal use of templates. They can